Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us for this summit talk. In this talk, we're going to be learning about breaking writer's block and building a daily writing practice with our guest, Carolyn Dawn Flynn. Carolyn is not only an author, but also a book coach, so she is chock full of advice to support writers. At any time, please do use the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen to send in your questions for Carolyn. You can also check the Answered tab of the Q&A box, where you can see answers to questions that have already been posed. Just for attendees of this talk, we are running an exclusive giveaway for 5 free 30-minute Find Out More sessions with Carolyn herself. Just put your writing or publishing goals in the chat right now, and I'm going to announce 5 winners at the end of this talk. Also, this talk is brought to you by Book Life, Publishers Weekly's website dedicated to indie authors. Book Life reviews are guaranteed paid reviews from Publishers Weekly reviewers. They help you establish credibility and enhance your marketing, plus they give you actionable feedback. And for a limited time, Atmosphere Press Writers Summit attendees will receive $40 off a prized Book Life review. You can visit booklife.com/writers summit to get your discount. Book Life reviews have become the gold standard in paid reviews because of their quality, so get your book the insight and the credibility of a Book Life review. Again, for a limited time, Atmosphere Press Writers Summit attendees will receive $40 off a Book Life review. And I'll put the link in the chat so you can all take advantage of this. Dozens of Atmosphere Press authors have received glowing reviews from Book Life, including a few books that have received their premier editor's pick designation. So Atmosphere Press is proud to collaborate with Book Life. With that, I am thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. Memoirist, novelist, and essayist Carolyn Dawn Flynn is the author of the memoir Boundless and 7 books of nonfiction. Boundless was longlisted for the 2021 Dyslexia International Memoir Prize and the 2022 First Pages Prize. Her work has been published in Fourth Genre, Hunger Mountain, Under the Gum Tree, Arts and Letters, the Colorado Sun, the Tampa Review, the Whitefish Review, and the Montana Prize for Fiction, Albuquerque Journal, Sage Magazine, Albuquerque the Magazine, and Wild Frauen. She's a single mother of Ukrainian Irish American twins and was the longtime editor of a life-giving magazine called Sage. In her TEDx Women Talk, Tell a Better Story, Live a Better Life, Carolyn has inspired countless others to live their sacred yes, even in a world that may split open, as the writer Muriel Rukeyser once famously said, if one woman spoke the truth. Carolyn now lives in Albuquerque, where she's a hiker and a pilgrim and a desert dweller who's an appreciator of horizons. She's known as the Story Catalyst, offering developmental editing, book coaching, and publishing consultations. Follow her on Substack for writing craft tips, publishing know-how, writing retreats, such as Italy in 2026, and behind the scenes with Boundless. That's all at carolynflynn.substack.com. So Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Okay. Gosh, thank you for that. Thank you to everyone at Atmosphere Press for holding this summit. This is so valuable to writers who, whether you're just getting started or whether you're just writing that next book after that first book after that, after you got the book bug. So I'm just really honored to be here. I'm going to talk about the Untamed writer, and it's how to write with the wolves, but it's basically how to never have writer's block. So I call it the Untamed Right, how to track wonder, hunt awe, and otherwise be a wild one. So I'm going to start us off with a quote from one of my favorite authors. She has many books, but probably her big stand-up book is a memoir that is just unforgettable, Caravan of No Despair, and this is Mirabai Starr. There is a secret place, a radiant sanctuary, as real as your own kitchen, more real than that, constructed of the purest elements, overflowing with the 10,000 beautiful things, worlds within worlds, forests, rivers, velvet coverlets thrown over feather beds, fountains bubbling beneath a canopy of stars, bountiful forests, universal libraries, a wine cellar offering an intoxication so sweet you will never be sober again, a clarity so complete you will never again forget. This magnificent refuge is inside you. Enter, shatter the darkness that shrouds the doorway. Believe the incredible truth that the beloved has chosen for his dwelling. Place the core of your own being because, I'm sorry, I read that a little bit wrong. Believe this incredible truth that the beloved has chosen for his dwelling place, the core of your own being, because that is the single most beautiful place in all of creation. So, what is the untamed right? It is, it's that place to begin where you won't really ever want to stop. It's also original, which is the latest, the best antidote that I could ever think of to our AI world. This is the place where you find out how you can be original. Sometimes it will be astonishing even to you. If you use these practices for writing practice, you will find that you are gaining mastery in just being present, being alive, being able to be gut wrenching, and being able to build up the tolerance so you can write something that's that remarkable or visceral for the reader. It's a little bit feral. So that's why I call this the untamed right. You are harnessing the raw emotion that will be the engine of your story. So this is the big why of the practice. And this is actually the part that writers often want to skip because we want to have polished work. But it's here and only here is where you can get to the heart of the matter. Everyone starts there with the rules, with the polished way to do it. But what if you began, and we see, and that's the work we see, which is why I do believe in reading like a writer. And I feel like it's the best way to be a writer is to read like a writer. But at the same time, just remember we are always seeing their tamed work. We are never seeing their untamed work. Only you or your trusted members of your beta group are seeing your untamed work. And then the writer that you love and admire has mastered how to tame that untamed work. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too at the end of how to tame your untamed work, because we definitely want to get there. One reason I have this talk is because of 100 people who set out to write a book, only 3 will finish the book. So only 3% of people who start out with the goal of finishing a book actually finish the book. I will also say as a book coach that 100% of the people who come to me and finish their book get published. So I want to give this to you so that you can be in that 3% and finish your book. And I believe that there's a path to publishing for everybody because I believe that there's a reader out there wanting what you are offering, your drop of gold. So this is how to begin. Begin with a feral mind. You have just escaped. You are free of all the things they told you not ever to do. This notebook, whether it's a physical notebook, I like to write on pen and paper still, or if it's a digital notebook and you're typing on your computer, but this notebook, this place is your bountiful forest and your infinite library. Begin with a curious mind because questions have power. Wholehearted listening has power. Begin with a yearning mind. So yearning is the big engine of stories. You've probably remarked, I couldn't put it down. And it's probably because there was a character in that story who had an intense longing for something. So if you can tap into the yearning as you begin to write, that is going to shine through on the page, through all the drafts that you'll have after this. So when you start at this place, you may think, I don't want to do that. This is messy. This isn't right. You also might think, At the same time, you're looking at the mess you put on the page. You may also be thinking, and please notice this is astonishingly beautiful. I honestly didn't know I was going to go there. You may actually notice I just cracked open my heart. You may also notice I don't want anybody to see this. Then you may take a deep breath and reflect on your words again and think, this is exquisite. I'm on to something. Don't know what it is, but I know I must share it. That's how you know that you're doing an untamed right at the beginning. So I call this one the Raw Wild Beauty Draft. This is your first draft. You've probably heard Anne Lamott call it the shitty first draft. And I think that's extremely useful for just going like, just spill it out. Just let it happen. And let it not be brilliant or perfect. But this is a little bit better than saying shitty first draft, but it's the same kind of thing. It just reminds us that the beauty is there and that it is raw and it's something you can do something with. You are essentially doing the most important piece of writing, which is you are telling the story to yourself. This is where you really begin to get your full vision of the book that you are writing. Because there are parts of it that maybe, again, like I said, you might astonish yourself. There are parts of your vision for the book that you might not have seen yet. And that's why this first draft is so important to begin, because everyone begins on this one, which is the make this make sense to me draft. So this is where you really do start to get practical. You're starting to tell the story to the page, believing there's a reader on the other side. Your story may land in a real moving scene in a specific place with at least two people in a conflict. Your story is moving now. It has external action as well as the internal force of your character's desires and needs. There's a destination, even if the destination is an ending you don't know yet, but there's something about having a destination that propels it. The character needs to get out of this place. The character leaves the room. I'll just break in and say this is true of self-help nonfiction too, except that in self-help nonfiction, the character is the reader that you're trying to help because the reader wants to transform something about his or her life. In this draft, you may think you're telling it to the reader. You may think that, but what you're really doing is telling it to the page and think of the page as your friend. And always remember when you have that little hesitation that may keep you from getting there, that thing that we call writer's block, which I don't believe exists. Remember this, the page is your friend. The page wants to see your face. The page is there to help you get to the next place, which is where the alchemy happens. I call the third run through or third draft the alchemy right. And that's where the magic happens. Now you're writing for the reader. If you skip the first step, you may have a well executed, fairly competent piece of writing that doesn't have any flaws in it, but also does not move anyone. If you skip the second step and you are that person who pours it all out, you may have what I call deep diarrhea. That's a deep diary on a level that you probably don't want to imagine. But if you have both of these together and you are good at get good at fusing them together, you have the most powerful thing of all. So you use the emotion to power the action, and you use your insight about what you're really, really after, what's on the line, what's at stake. This is one of the big questions you'll have to answer when you do a query letter to an agent or anyone who's a gatekeeper to the business is what's at stake? What no one else has ever said. There's something about the forbidden that compels us to pay attention. If you can do that and braid those two drafts together in this third step, the narrator and the character have become clear to you. You have become in command of both the raw beauty and the logic of meaning in the story. That's the alchemy. So at last, you are writing for the reader. So Mirabai Starr calls it something a little different. She calls it the unfiltered write, and that's useful for what I'm about to tell you about how to do a free write. This is the wild heart, but unfiltered is the key word there. You don't have to filter this first right. The next one is filtered. You are starting to filter out. You're making some decisions about, like, man, we don't have to go there, but we definitely want to go there. The alchemized is where truth and beauty become one. And you know deep in your soul that your reader is waiting. So, how could you possibly have writer's block if you know that? So, vows to take on the front end of an untamed right. As you are doing an unfiltered right or the raw beauty right, don't cross out. Even if you make a mistake, like you write an E when you meant to write an I, just don't. You'll fix it. Don't cross out. Don't stop. Natalie Goldberg has been one of my teachers who's informed me a lot about this. She has a book called Writing Down the Bones, and this comes from her, and I did a lot of writing practice with her. She says, don't stop. Even when the atom bomb goes off, just keep writing until the radiation gets you. And I thought that was a pretty powerful image to have in my mind about not stopping. So keep the pen moving. Find ways to get back in. Same way, if you are a meditator, and my meditation practice has greatly informed this practice, and my writing practice has informed my meditation practice. But keep the pen moving. Notice that you're out, get back in. Do another prompt. Best prompt could be I remember or I don't remember. Either one of those, if you just want one to throw in there at any point when you are not keeping the pen moving, you can throw one of those two in there. Be present. Notice when you're not present. Just gently bring yourself back. Look up. Look at the mountain. Look out the window. Start to notice your sensory world. Get back in. As you are writing, be specific. Don't say tree. Say red sequoia or weeping willow. Practice doing that. Become fluent at being specific. And again, keep the pen moving is the dominant rule. So if on this particular day you're going like red sequoia, weeping willow, I don't know what kind of tree it is. You're allowed to put tree, and you will also see that there's a practice for coming back into it and going a little deeper with every little thing that you give yourself. But if you commit to being specific as you are writing, you will eventually become so fluent at it. Be authentic. So George Saunders, another one of my favorite writing teachers and favorite writers, with every draft, he says, he is seeking to make the writing more honest and more vivid. So honest means, have I truly been honest with myself? Is that really how the mother is in that story? And more vivid. Can I really see it? Could the reader see it too? Could the reader see it so clearly they could fill in the rest of the picture? That's all about the telling details. For instance, in the Bruce Springsteen song, barefoot girl sitting on the hood of a Dodge drinking warm beer on a summer night. That's the lyric. I ask people, what's she wearing? Bruce Springsteen does not have that line in the song, what she's wearing. Everyone has a picture, and they can describe the whole rest of who they think this woman is in this song. And that's what I mean by vivid. Barefoot girl, hood of a Dodge. Some of those things are so specific that they create such a vivid picture that we can fill in the rest, that we feel like there's a real human being with something at stake in that song. So also just remind yourself, it's a completely safe place, your first write. It's a sanctuary. I have a wolf metaphor going here, so maybe it's a wolf sanctuary, if you will. No one has to see it. There are no rules about what's off limits, ever. So it's a practice, not an outcome. Your goal is to gain skill in the moment, in any moment, to render a sentence with honesty and specificity that gives the readers the feeling they are right there with you or your character. And when you practice, you find you're so adept at getting at what's clear, true, and real that you don't need as much editing or revision. Gain a habit. Best way to create a habit is not to schedule it, actually. You may think that it is. The best way is to just have a system. So I'm going to talk a little about how we break that down in terms of time. And then what's going to emerge is you're going to gain confidence, which is that you're going to understand you can write your way out of anything, which will then start to dismantle this idea in your head that there is even such a thing as writer's block. So I laugh at the idea that there's writer's block. It's probably because of this very practice. I don't know why writers let people even tell them this, that they are so susceptible to writer's block, as if you were susceptible to a germ. And it's going to get you. And it's going to get you more than other people. Like it's not going to get surgeons. It's just going to get writers. I just don't understand. It like it's some kind of contagion and it's bigger than us and we can't avoid it. So what I say about writer's block is if there's any blocking, it's because you're doing the blocking. You're doing the blocking by agreements that you've made. Maybe, and it's good to take inventory of what are the agreements that you have made. Perhaps within a writing community, you all have agreed this is something that we just sort of laugh about and grouse about, but we all have it, and maybe you're building up the relationships and it feels like you're building up community, but there's something about that. It's like if we're creating a common agreement that we got it, you're sort of creating a common woe is us kind of feeling. So anything that when you think about this and break this down may come down to some kind of agreement that you made. Someone said something that you agreed was true about writing. I want you to ask yourself, is that really true? Does this serve my writing if I believe this? So the good news is if you understand you're doing the blocking, you can do the unblocking. The other pieces of it, know how you get to know how your mind moves. It's really a luxury in our culture to have time to which you commit to the question of what's on my mind today. Because we're always getting what's on everybody else's mind today. That prompt right there can be one of the best ones you put into your practice is what's on my mind today. That's all you have to do to begin. And if you know how your own mind moves, that is going to inform how the structure of your story moves. It's going to guide you to a logical sequence, the flow of events, the cause and effect of events. The big question I think any writer has when they're working on a longer book is what to reveal when. And knowing how your mind moves is the secret weapon. And finally, know where your heart really lives and know your creative process because it's not about undoing writer's block. It's about knowing your creative process better than anybody else. Down to, I write better in the morning or I write better at midnight. And I write better when I have a desk. I write better when I have a view. I write better when I hike first and then write. Whatever that is for you, optimize all the things that are surrounding your writing. So the practicalities, and I'll stop here for questions, are just that you can do this in little increments. Set a timer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 25. Develop prompts for yourself. Be your own best prompt maker. A strong noun, an active verb, something with voice like, I've never told anybody this, but, or some kind of small image that helps you get in to the rest of the story. I'm going to stop here and just mention that we have a place where you can do this with a whole bunch of other writers coming up on Monday, the 27th. And it's the Songs and Stories Writer Refuge. And we just get together and we write for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and 25 minutes together in this same way. So I'll stop here for questions.
Thank you so much for those insights, Carolyn, and thank you for leaving time for questions because I know a bunch of good ones have been coming in from the attendees. So we do have some time for the Q&A. So if you've got a question, go ahead and type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can check the answered tabs for answers to questions that have already been posed, or of course, we'll post these questions to Carolyn live. So it's apt that you brought up writer's block, Carolyn. So a couple of questions came in, which are: should you attempt to write even if you do have writer's block? Or are there any other exercise that can be used to get you out of that state?
Yes. I believe it really is a discipline of just sitting in the chair, but I also believe that there's something about just doing it where it will calm. I don't know if anybody else out there struggles with getting yourself to the gym so you do your workout. Um, those of us, we're only human. But there's kind of like this 10-second rule, like when you're trying to get to the gym. If you have it set up so it will only take you 10 seconds to get out the door, it will help you get over that hump, whether it's just making sure you have a hair tie so you can go. Make sure that's not the reason you're not going to the gym. So set yourself up so that you only have a 10-second way to get into writing. If you're having a difficult time, let your first 10-minute write be, I hate this. I hate writing today. My brain's fried. Just get it out because you know what, you're gonna get bored of your own self like that. Just like if you decided to dump all of that, I hate writing on a friend, eventually your friend's gonna pull you out of it. So sometimes I write about the meta of it. I'm not ready to write today because I really don't understand why my character said this. You know, sometimes I go meta. So those are a couple of tips.
Totally. I've definitely myself found that kind of just writing through that sometimes is the only way through, through and not and around, let's say.
Mhm.
Another question for you in follow up to the barefoot girl in the song you referred to: is there a method for providing enough detail, but not too much, so that the readers also themselves supplying some detail?
Yeah, Joan Didion called it the telling detail, and she was the master of it. So I guess first tip, go read Joan Didion, see how she did it. But also, I am the person who created this Stories and Songs Writer Retreat. I really believe songs are just a wonderful creative expression that is compressed writing. So is poetry. So if you're looking for like how to choose one specific detail that's so vivid and alive, look there. Look at songs, look at poetry, look at flash fiction. And probably the other building block is to try to put, okay, so Barefoot Girl, what's the one thing that you most notice about her? Like if she's a walking, living, breathing person and you've got like 300 details that you're noticing about her, but what's the one thing that defines her on that particular summer night? It's barefoot. Um, but another one is just practice putting a weird or unusual adjective with a noun. And if you pick like an adjective that people don't normally use or don't normally pair with that noun, you may end up with that telling detail that builds the whole picture for yourself because you have to see it first in order for the reader to be able to see it.
Totally. It's got to start in the writer's mind, right? And then the reader takes it from there.
Yeah.
Another question: do you have any suggestions regarding jumping around in the manuscript versus working in chronological order, especially when adding to and editing existing drafts?
Um, do not put yourself in the prison of writing in chronological order. I tell people to go to the hot scenes. I often tell people when they're just sort of mapping something out, pick your 5 marks to hit. And if you kind of know what those 5 marks are using hero's journey language, inciting incident, the lock-in, the first culmination, the final culmination, and the third act twist. That's going to simplify your thinking about all of it. And it's going to get you out of the trap of chronological writing is that you get into the day to day and you may end up telling a story that has the pace of daily life. We're not interested in the pace of daily life when we read stories. Hot scenes are the ones who, like, you can't wait to write them. I call this drafting to discover. You can't wait to write them because you want to know what the mother says to her son. Hot scenes are going to be anytime your two primary characters are together in the same room, or your protagonist and your antagonist. So I recommend jumping around a little bit, letting yourself have that freedom to do that, but also having a living, breathing outline so that you don't get lost, that you have a place to anchor back and come into. The benefit of chronological writing is that you understand cause and effect. Because this happened, this had to happen. Because that happened, I did this. So it's more about cause and effect than it is about time and chronology.
Totally. Yeah. It's a good way to kind of reframe that approach. Another question: how do you know when a draft is the final draft that is finally ready for sending out? Loaded question, I know.
Oh yeah, that's I have a kind of like a checklist for that. But one is probably that I would focus on the ending as a big test for that. The ending must be both surprising and inevitable. And if it meets that test, you probably then also want to look at the beginning again, because the beginning is what determined whether the ending was surprising or inevitable. A lot of times your first line is, if your first line is pregnant with meaning, and go look at first lines of other people's books and see which ones you feel like are so pregnant with meaning, books that you've read all the way through, so you know the ending. And go back to your own first chapters, because the first chapters are the big promise to the reader. They're the contract that you make with the reader. And if you do kind of examine those 2 points, you've got a lot of it. The other thing would probably be to just go, do I have a saggy middle? Do I even get bored when I'm doing this? Read it aloud. The best way to know if your reader will get bored or you will get bored is to read it aloud. You can start to make it leaner and meaner if you do that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn. This next question, this person says, I have always wondered, how does one know if what you have is a novel or a short story? Curious about your insights here.
Oh gosh, I'm the master of writing a short story and thinking I'm done and then realizing I have a novel. Do that on the CNF end of things. I had an essay that appeared in fourth genre in 2015. And I thought, well, good. I'm so glad I'm done with that. And then it turned out to be boundless. I ended up writing a whole memoir. So how do you know? I think it's Edgar Allan Poe called it the importance of the single effect. A short story or an essay has a single effect. And you really narrow in on that. And it may speak to the universal, but are really interested in completing that single effect for the shorter piece. If you've done your job well, there's so much meaning in it. There's so many layers in it because short stories are very layered that you may end up having a novel too. And if you end up having both, well, hallelujah. Now you have two pieces of creative work.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great positive way to look at that. It can feel overwhelming perhaps, but it's ultimately a good thing. This next question: the fear of not being good enough is the chain that's holding me back. How do you overcome that fear, or how do you write with it?
Mm, yeah. Well, I think that is partly why I do the writing practice. The writing practice itself starts to help to train your mind to notice that terrible self-talk that's on that tape. Anne Lamott calls it radio station F star CK. Or I don't know, I might have that joke wrong, but you get the idea. Um, it's that tape in your head. The writing practice itself is the cure because it will, what will happen is Nellie Goldberg calls it the monkey mind. The monkey mind is trying to protect you from doing something scary because you might fail and somebody might not publish it. And the monkey mind is just trying to keep you from doing that thing. You can just burst through it by writing another sentence and another sentence and another sentence. Um, Elizabeth Gilbert has a good tip of like you tell your fear, like, it's okay, honey. Today we're going to go here. We're just going to write this. You're going to be in the back seat and you get to come with me, but I'm driving today and we're going here. And just practicing doing that. I have a little thing on my Substack that's all kinds of ways to silence the inner critic. And one of them is you actually physically get up and ask the inner critic to leave. And the inner critic leaves out the door, and you close the door behind, and then you write. There's something about doing something physical to send your inner critic away. I'd like to send him on an errand he will never complete, to find an obscure ingredient at the world market for my recipe that I'm making, and it will take him all day to get to the store, and it won't be on the shelf, and it will take him all day to get back through rush hour traffic. So I sometimes really banish my inner critic.
Well, I love that visual way of describing it that you just went through. So I think this is a great piece of advice for people. And Carolyn, we've just got time for one more question. This question is, would you talk more about the need for a habit or a system?
Oh, yeah, more than discipline. Yeah, well, a good source on this is James Clear's book Atomic Habits, and he talks about systems. But to have a way, well, one thing I do is I hook things together. Like I hook a hike to a write. So sometimes I write out in the wild. Or I hook my coffee, my best coffee, to I sit down and write now. And what else? I make sure I protect my beautiful mind. So that means not to let yourself get into all the distractions. Because the distractions can just sort of dull your senses after a certain point. And then all of a sudden you notice that you're only half writing. You're only writing a little bit, or you don't like what you're writing because you let yourself do all the things on your phone. So I do, I mean, I'm like everybody else. I'll read the news. I use my phone. I'll scroll, but I will limit it because it's about protecting your beautiful mind. But the system is really just making sure that that self-care and support for your body and your mind and your spirit are always there underneath everything you're doing in life. The most important thing being who you love and what you're writing about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that, Carolyn. I think that's a beautiful way to close out the Q&A for this session. That is all the questions we have time for in this talk. So thank you so much to Carolyn Flynn for sharing your knowledge and your advice with us today. Make sure you check out in the chat. I put a link to the Stories and Songs Writer Refuge that Carolyn's doing for free this Monday. So be sure to tune in. And thank you also to everybody in the audience for sending in these great questions. This is a great conversation to be able to have. The
Mm.
next talk we're running today is going to be a look inside the book cover design process with our cover designer, Matthew Fielder. To rejoin the Zoom webinar for Matthew's talk, you can just click the same link you clicked to join the Zoom for this talk. While you're in the digital waiting room, you can enjoy excerpts from the audiobook, The Significance of Curly Hair by Kara L. Zajac. Thank you again also to this talk's sponsor, Book Life. Get your book the insight and credibility of a Book Life review. And for a limited time, Atmosphere Press Writers Summit attendees will receive $40 off a Book Life review. I put the link in the chat one more time, so definitely be sure to take advantage of that offer. And I'm happy to announce this talk's 5 giveaway winners. The winners of a free 30-minute session with Carolyn to find out more about your manuscript, your project, are Maria Hedgepeth, Kristen Kaichin, Ashley Horst, John Barone, and Christine Gabrielle. Please look out for an email from Atmosphere this week about arranging the delivery of your prize. And in the meantime, we look forward to seeing all of you in the next talk.